So I'm looking for a good deal. So you've probably heard this either from a client or you've even said this yourself. And today, what we're going to be doing in this video is discussing what actually makes a good deal from a variety of different perspectives. So my name is Andre. I'm here with the Adams Group. I'm the one and only James Adams. And we're going to talk today about what makes a good deal. So James, when you hear that phrase, I'm looking for a good deal, where does your head go?
Um, so it's very common, right? So the first place that my head goes is what is a good deal?
Right.
Is where it goes to. For me, a good deal means that I'm getting a home that has equity built into it for what I'm buying it for. But what I found for other people, there's two common categories. So that's one. The other one is maybe they can walk into this home with little or no money out of pocket.
Okay.
Is the other one. But it's very subjective. So we need to understand what a good deal is to the perceiver. Who's asking for a good deal and what is a good deal to them?
Gotcha. So in this video, we're going to do 5 most commonly referred to items that we would look at in terms of figuring out which one a good deal is. All right. So number 1 is on-market properties, which this on-market properties, we hear this a lot because the consumer right now can see with Zillow, Realtor, Homes, almost a lot of the different everything that we can see in a sense.
Yep.
But it doesn't mean that they understand everything about what they're looking at, because there's a lot of information that sometimes it's a bit subtle.
Yep.
On a lot of those listing descriptions and all of these sites. There's Zestimates, which I know you feel very strongly about. So let's talk a little bit about on-market properties. What are some things that when you're looking for a good deal on on-market properties, what are some things you're looking for in a listing that would tell you that you have the potential to get a good deal here?
Absolutely. So one is negotiability, right? So like how negotiable are they going to be? How many days on market is the property? Has it had any back on markets? That shows me how motivated they might be, right? On the other side of the deal. The other one is doing an analysis. So you touched on the Zestimate. The Zestimate makes, it's an automated valuation. So it's using a formula that may or may not be accurate. And on every single CMA I run, I actually pull that statistic to see how far off the two of them are. And it's not reliable. It's not something that you can use to tell you what's a good deal. So to me, I have to understand what the true value of the property is in its current state in order to make any kind of opinions. And sometimes in order to get to that, you have to look at a property that's maybe a little outdated and compare it to a property that's updated and understand what are the costs that are associated to get it from current condition to that condition. And you need that because what's the ARV of the one that's completed? Then you have to subtract your repairs. So what are those updates going to cost in order to get it to that condition and make sure that what you're buying it for still has equity beyond that. A lot of times I've seen past stories of people buying a home, renovating the home, and they're really upside down if they look at it the right way. They put 50 grand into a home, bought it for 300, and then they're going to sell it for 340. Like, it sucks, right?
So there's a little bit of terminology we're going to have to go back and kind of explain. So ARV is after repair value.
Yep.
Equity is the difference between your purchase price and what the home is worth.
Yep.
Right. And so those are two terms that if you're not familiar with it, you might miss that when it comes to looking at a house. And so we see this a lot where, somebody is buying a fully remodeled home, but they're looking or ignoring the home that hasn't been remodeled because the work has already been done.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so they're willing to pay a premium to actually have that work already done for them?
Not always, I've found. So this is where the coaching comes in. This is where the consultation comes in. If somebody wants a home that's completely done, they should at least understand that they could buy the identical home, same floor plan, and do the work. And let's say that the remodeled home is $400,000. The home that needs a ton of work is $300,000, and that home is going to take $60,000 in order to make it equal with this home. They should know that if they go that route, they're picking up $40,000 in equity as opposed to buying this one with zero equity, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think that sometimes that's something that is thought about because of the trouble of it, but let's be really honest. $40,000 to get ahead, it's a year's worth of work for some folks, right? That's something that needs to be talked about and worked through. I do want to go back to the Zestimate. So like when it comes to analyzing a deal that's on the market, you can't use any ARV. It's just not reliable. And I want to compare this to when you're buying a car, right? If you're going to go in and buy a car and you're going to trade your car in, the very first place that everybody's going to go is Kelley Blue Book. Kelly Blue Book uses exact comparables. Cars don't have various different kitchen types, various different bathroom types. Maybe they have some feature differences that are actually broken down in the models, but you can get specific comps for your car, which makes that value very close on trade in value. They have all the numbers to see it. You can't call that even with the Zestimate. You actually have to do this on, one by one, going through the houses to do an analysis in order for us to advise on what price is. So if you're analyzing a deal, the first thing is to understand what it's actually worth, because what the price is doesn't matter. And so many times I see people try to over negotiate on something that's already a good deal and they lose out on it, which just break it down, right? If you're looking at a $300,000 house that is really worth 330, are you really going to lose out the house because they're not going to negotiate 15 grand with you? That's silly, because you might go to the next house that's 300 and it's really worth 295 and they agree to 285. Who's in a better spot? The person who paid 300 for the 330 or the person that paid 285 for the house that's really worth 295?
Right. And so when we figure that part out, how would you go about determining that a house is worth 330?
Great question. So the first thing is you got to look at comparable sales. In this current market, because it's been shifting so drastically, you need it over the last 90 days. What is selling? What are they selling for? What are the key differences? What do you put on values for those key differences between the comparables? And that's something that we put together to show all of our clients before they're buying a home, or if somebody's looking to list their home, so that we can work through it. And believe it or not, it's really digestible. When we get done, we sit down in front of our clients and we go through each one and look at it. Is this better or worse than the home we're looking at?
Right.
Very, very simple when you get it down into that format. But you need the homes that have sold as your reference.
Does the term, because you see this in the listing agreement, sometimes it gets updated to go seller motivated.
Yeah.
What, when you hear seller motivated, does that trigger something in you that is a good deal, or do you think that's more of a marketing kind of tactic?
I think it's marketing. It's usually a seller who's overpriced but doesn't believe they need to reduce their price in order to sell the home is usually what it means. It will tell me that somebody is willing to negotiate, right? So it does tell me that, but I think that seller would be much better showing the action of being motivated, reducing the price, right? Because usually when you see that price, that home is overpriced by $20,000-$30,000.
Gotcha. So for this one, just to kind of sum it up, we have our days on market, keywords in the listings, what has sold in the last 90 days, and also we want to know which way the market's heading.
Yep.
And so those, for that, number one is how to approach on-market properties. So now let's switch gears and go to number two. And this is one that we've talked quite a bit about, and I still to this day am finding deal after deal in new construction.
Yep.
And so in new construction, right now we've shown a few graphs about how the price of a new construction and the price of a resale have intersected, and that typically has not happened. Usually there's always been a premium for new construction homes over resale, but that's not true today.
Nope.
The other thing that most people aren't really talking a lot about, because they don't know where to find it, or they're not generally aware, is that a lot of these builders are offering incentives, and there's two main type of incentives that they're offering. Number one is closing cost assistance. So they'll either tell you that they're covering their closing costs, or they'll do something called flex cash, which will allow you to pay for your closing costs and have maybe a little bit extra. And we'll talk a little bit about what you should do with that extra, because I think that's where the deal really comes into play. And the other thing is competitive pricing. As an example, I just saw a new construction actually the other day. It was a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,900 square foot brand new home at about $332,000, so $168 a square foot. You go outside of that radius into the community, and you're finding that a similarly situated house is going for $185 to $200 a square foot. And these are homes that were built in the 1980s, 1990s, if you're lucky in the 2000s, right, depending on the area. And so when we talk about new construction and incentives, I laid out a little bit of a case, but what do you think about that? What have you seen in that area?
Well, I think you kind of laid it out. I'm going to change up the words a little bit. So not equity, but net position, right? So if you're looking at a home that's a resale home at 330, or you're looking at this new construction where they're willing to cover your closing costs, well, your closing costs are going to run somewhere around 3%. So call that $10,000. If you're competing with your friend, and your friend buys the resale and you buy the new construction, all said and done, you're $10,000 ahead of them. You have $10,000 retained in your bank account. So your net on the situation has gone up just because of that one thing. The other thing that you said there is really true. So there's a lot of inventory out there for new construction, which makes it an opportunity. They cannot sit on their houses. They reduce price because they have that money and there's liabilities involved in it. They are getting rid of those houses. So because of the current market conditions, somebody can go in, they're going to realize that gap that you were talking about between resale and new construction. Historically, it's run somewhere between 5 and 10%. That's all equity once it gets realized, right?
Mhm.
When we get back to a normalized market, that is going to go back up in value. The resales are going to end up being less than what the new construction is. So that gap reappears in a normal market. It's a absolute no brainer. Then you throw in there that they're doing special interest rates.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, if anybody's looking to buy a home right now, it's definitely new construction. You don't have to worry about anything.
Right.
Like you walk in, everything's brand new. There's no deferred maintenance. It's just a no brainer.
So now we were talking a little bit about like that anything where there's money left over, and you had a choice between buying down an interest rate or
Mhm.
reducing the purchase price of the house. Now we'll assume that a lot of our viewers will know the answer to this question, but there's a chance that somebody's watching this for the first time trying to figure this out. Where would you, if you had the choice for yourself, would you either lower the purchase price or would you buy down your interest rate?
Man, so me personally, I want to reduce. I want to keep. I want to reduce my interest rate. Is where me personally goes, but this does depend. There are situations where somebody might say to themselves, "The rate's good enough. I'm going to refi that in 2 years. I'd rather save it on the purchase price." It doesn't really matter to me all that much that I'm paying a little bit more, right?
Gotcha.
I can
Yeah.
see that both ways.
Now, a misconception that exists, especially in our area in Spring Hill, is that when you're buying a new construction, it has to be in an HOA community. There's actually quite a few builders that will build new construction, move-in ready homes that are not custom on spot lots.
Yep.
And so you can get a no HOA, no CDD community, brand new build in Spring Hill or Royal Highlands, a little bit further north, and not be in an HOA community
Yeah.
at those same price points as well. So I know some people don't want to be in HOA communities and they think that that's the only way that you can get a new build unless you're buying land and doing all custom process. So there's other ways that you can do it. You just have to get the information.
When we're going through this, that's like the perfect storm. So, like when we look at a good deal is either equity in our home or less money out of pocket. It's kind of a baby of both, right? They're really helping you on your closing costs, so it's less money out of pocket, and there's an equity opportunity inside of it because of the current market conditions. New construction is where the good deal is right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3, down payment assistance
Mhm.
programs. So now this is where having a quality lending partner makes a big deal. And here at Adams Group, we have the one and only Robert Rodriguez, who works with us on our team, also a realtor who does lending. And the partnership between the agent and the lender in terms of figuring out how to get you into the home
Yep.
with as little out of pocket as you can, hopefully,
Yeah.
is value there. So talk a little bit about down payment assistance programs. There's some famous ones that people know about, something like Hometown Heroes, very,
Yep.
very popular one. But I've read somewhere that there's hundreds of different options for down payment assistance. What's been your experience in there?
So I think you hit the nail on the head. It's having a great lending partner that can break them down and figure out which ones make sense. But the most common one's a Florida bond. I've seen that one used quite a bit in the past. That's right around 7,500 they give to you. The SHIP program, which is in Pasco County and Hernando County, those range, but about $10,000 towards your closing costs. Hometown Heroes, which is up to 5%. We were talking earlier. I know that's coming back, and that's really exciting for everybody. The programs are good if you're trying to figure this out. So we're really passionate about helping people build net worth, and we know that the difference between a renter and a homeowner is the difference of having a net worth on average of 10,000 versus 396,000. That's today's statistics on that. So one of the reservations I see all the time is a renter is like, oh, I just can't afford to do this. I can't make that gap. Well, they don't know that we have solutions that we could get them into a house for almost no money out of pocket. I know for sure we get them into a house for less money than what it costs to start a rental.
Yeah.
$2,000 a month, first last security, that's $6,000 out of pocket. So when it comes to down payment assistance, my best advice is that you need a really good partner that understands the programs and can work through to determine which ones are out there. But if you have held back from buying a home because of capital limits,
Right.
it's worth a conversation, because between down payment assistance and getting closing cost assistance, we can get you into a home for less than what you can pick a rental up for.
And so seller credit is the other side of that equation.
Yeah.
So we have, and I talk to too many people who don't understand the seller credit process, and so that's why the consultation is so important that
Yep.
we do. And so you have the down payment assistance program, which by its nature it's assisting with down payment, but then you still have closing costs.
Yep.
And so again, big chunk of money that could come out. And what people don't realize is the negotiation is not always just on purchase price. It could be on seller credits.
Yes.
And depending on the type of loan that you have will determine what percentage of the seller a credit you can ask for. And we won't go into too many details there, but just know that there's different limits for the different type of loan. But you can also now have the down payment assistance plus your seller credit. You can get into a home essentially for zero.
Well, you kind of got to a really cool spot there. I think everybody can learn from this video is that when it comes to assessing a good deal, there's really two approaches to that. We can reduce the monthly payment, which is negotiating on purchase price. Because if you're putting 3.5% down and you reduce your purchase price by $10,000, you're you're not saving all that much money out of pocket, right?
Right.
Like that's not really changing one way or the other. You're just reducing your payment, and for every $5,000, it's going to run about $35 a month in payment. So if you're looking at two options, negotiating on purchase price, it's going to save you about $70 a month in your payment on $10,000, or you can negotiate that $10,000 to be a seller credit. Seller doesn't care; it's equal to them. It's still the same net. And now, what $10,000 in seller credit does is it retains $10,000 in your bank account after closing.
Absolutely.
Simplest way to think about
Yep. So number 4, and this is one that I think can get a bit confusing. So we'll take our time. Assumability.
it.
Assumability of a loan. Now, I've known this working with clients that realtor.com will actually put on their listing that the loan is assumable, but I want to caveat that that's not true. What they're doing is they're just pointing out that this person has a type of loan that could be assumed, not so much that the seller is willing to actually allow you to assume it.
Yep.
And so talk a little bit about assumability. What is the simplest definition of assumability that we can give our audience?
I want to start with that it's not really common knowledge. So it does take working with an agent who understands it, because even though that agent might understand it, you might be looking at a house that is assumable and it makes sense, but the other agent might not understand it. Then there has to be an explanation, right? So assumability, it works for VA loans, it works for FHA loans, and it is you assuming the loan and the rate that they currently have on their home. So if we're looking at a home that is $350,000 and they had just bought the home 2 years ago when interest rates were a little bit better, and maybe they bought it for $300,000 in that point, at a 3% interest rate. I'm going to make this really simple. Let's say they didn't pay down any of their principal, so they owe $300,000 on the loan, 3.5% interest rate. You can buy the home for $350,000, assuming the $300,000 loan, and then you bring the delta. So you bring the $50,000, which is the difference between $350,000 and $300,000, in cash to it.
Okay. Now, caveat number 2 is the actual lending institution has to approve that as
Amen.
well.
Yep.
And so this is a more complicated method.
Oh yeah.
However, what we see happen is with VA, it's less likely because every person that I've ever talked to with VA doesn't want to give up their benefit going forward.
Yep.
So if you see somebody with a VA loan, they typically can only have the one loan for them. And so if they sell the house, they take the benefit with them and then they go to the next one. If they give that benefit away, they can no longer use that. Am I fair assessment, right?
Yep.
And also, even if you were, you still have to get the approval from the institution. And on top of that, depending on how long they've owned that house, you might be talking about a significant down payment.
Yep.
Now, if it all worked in the favor and the process was good, it's being able to find somebody who has a really, really low interest rate
in a high balance.
Yep. That's where you're looking.
That's your
someone
sweet spot.
Who's maybe on an FHA loan, more likely, who has only owned the home for less than 2 years, 3 years, right? When the interest rates were at its lowest.
Yep.
And there's not a huge gap between the purchase price and what they owe on the loan.
I can tell you that if somebody is specifically only looking for this scenario, we're going to have to sit down up front and it's going to take a retainer. It is a pigeonholed, very difficult thing to find. If you are good with it, if you find it, great, as long as you're open to other options. If you're looking for this specific thing, it is a great deal of work. It
Yeah.
is a great deal of work going through all the homes, calling them, because most agents aren't going to know what loan type they have. Most agents are not going to know if it's assumable. So you got to have one-to-one conversations with all of them
Right.
in order to get through it. But in the case that you find it, difference between 7.5% and 3.5% is pretty great. Your payment difference is pretty great. It's if you're looking for a great deal, it is a great deal
Right.
in order to find assumability.
And I think what people don't realize is like a lot of the back end, you know, things that we have access to show us the
Mhm.
loan type, the balance, when, who, what. Like it's all out there,
Yep,
aggregated,
you can boil it down.
and really narrow it down. But like you said, it's a lot of upfront work.
Yeah.
But it is, when we're talking about like how do we find a great deal, that is an avenue for that. All right, last one, number 5, off market properties. And now I think there's a little bit of a stigma with off market properties because I think people insert whatever their predisposition is to what it means to be off market.
Yep.
And there's quite a few different ways that a property can be off market. Anything that's not actively listed in the MLS, I would assume is an off market property.
Exactly
Right?
right.
Fair.
Yep.
Now, whether or not that person's a willing seller
Yep.
is what we're determining. And so there's off market properties that are investor led, where the term we were using earlier, they're looking to offload it to somebody who has the actual goal of repairing it and then reselling it
Yep.
as an investment, right?
Yep.
That's an off market property. We see a lot of those.
Yep.
And they have a specific language that they talk in, which is like after repair value, hard money loan, hard money buyers, whatever. But there's also another segment of off-market properties is individuals that we talk to that may not be ready to sell right now, but if the right opportunity presented itself, they would sell their home in a heartbeat.
Yep.
And so how would somebody find something like that?
I mean, one is working with us, right? Like just to throw that out there, we have a list of those. We work with these. We have a ton of people that are inside of our database who aren't ready to sell or would sell under the right conditions, as you said. I want to talk about the secondary list there. If somebody is very specific about the location they want to be in, this is easiest if it's one particular neighborhood. They can come to us and we will call the neighbors inside of that neighborhood to see if anybody is willing to sell.
Right.
And we have to know what you're looking for. We can boil it down so we're only looking at 4-bedroom, 2-bath homes. And from there, we pull the list, we call them, and we figure out if somebody is willing to sell. And it is a great way to find a deal because honestly, we're representing our buyer. The other side may or may not know what their home is worth. And if they say a number that is below the number that it's really worth, that's the realized gain of going with that strategy.
Right.
Yep.
And so yeah, off market, again, it's not something that's commonly discussed.
Nope.
So there's a lot of off-market deals out there that could be had, and we wanted to keep this list fairly straightforward. And so we have these 5 things that when you say, how do I find a great deal or what is a great deal? These are the ways that we can make a great deal happen. And so if that's something you want to know a little bit more about, you can reach out to us. We'll put our numbers on the screen. We can have a conversation about that, what your goals are, have a consult. Again, everything starts with a consult. There's no obligation there, but it's really just about getting an idea of what you're trying to do, because we get this statement. So I'm looking for a great deal. It is such a large statement that if you don't actually narrow that down to what does that mean for the individual, we can be spinning our wheels for a long time. So until that, we will see you guys in the next video, and you hope you have a blessed day.